You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Global Trade This Week. I'm Pete Mento, and my intrepid co-host, the salt to my vinegar, the corn chips to my queso, Doug Draper.
Yeah.
How are you, buddy?
Pete, I'm doing great. It's August 1st, right? I don't know if we're supposed to timestamp dates on these things, right, or not. But anyway, it's August 1st. It is also, we didn't talk about this in the last few minutes, Colorado's birthday. 1876, the 38th state entered into the Union. Today is the day. So happy birthday, Colorado.
Happy birthday, Colorado.
Yeah. I can't do the math on my head real quick to figure out what that is. 148, maybe 43.
Maybe.
Something like, I need Siri to help me out. That's how pathetic we are nowadays. I don't even, it's either Alexa or Siri when it's simple math and you just don't want to jack with it. You know, hey Siri, what's 27 times 9? And whoops.
27 times 9 is 243.
There you go, 243.
Thanks, Siri. Yeah. Pretty soon, Doug, it's going to be like, where are my pills? You know, did I take my pills this morning?
Yeah, for sure. So, but it's good. It's good to see you, Pete, and always love this show. I was talking to a coworker here at my co-working space, and I asked him if he could get out of my booth, and he's like, "Yeah, you got your podcast today," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Step aside, son. We got work to do."
That's right.
So
That's right.
it's good. It'll be good. Good show, good half times. I'm excited about halftime, Pete. I think whenever I promote the show on LinkedIn, I'm going to lead with that because the story is unbelievable.
It is an excellent story, but you know, I'm a little, I don't know about halftime. I do it because it makes you happy.
Thank you. Yes, it is.
Makes you happy.
So.
But listen, I opened the show, so that means that Doug will be receiving in the first half. So why don't you go ahead and run with it, buddy?
All right, man. So this is related to electric vehicles and our auto industry and how we've talked about this in previous episodes, Pete, about owning the rails. And a lot of that happened during the pandemic when larger companies were able to just take back things that they had outsourced so they had greater control. You know, FedEx, UPS would be examples of a vertical integrated company with trucks, planes, sort centers, the whole 9 yards. And an article I saw this weekend kind of caught my attention because GM was saying that slow battery production for the machinery is starting to delay the rollout of their electric vehicles, right? So part of it is, we got to make the batteries, but part of it is the machinery that makes the batteries. And I'm not here to talk in depth about batteries, but there's this new generation that's going to be uniform for all of their models, and so it's super important that one fires up. So my thoughts were is the motor industry and the car industry now morphing into a battery production company where they have so much demand and so many financial milestones to hit in order to move forward, and commitments they've made with percentages of their fleet that are going to be electrified. Are they going to be switching into not only car manufacturers, but battery manufacturers? And it looks like the answer to that is yes. And then the other piece of that, Pete, is, again, some things that have come on board is the standardization or the universal nature of charging stations, right? So GM recently said, hey, we're going to have this plug-in that's going to work with all Tesla charging stations across the country. Tesla has about 17,000 of them. And then just shortly thereafter, there was an article about 7 car manufacturers across the world: BMW, GM, Honda, Kia, Mercedes-Benz, whatever the company is formerly known as Fiat Chrysler. They're all basically collaborating to try to build 30,000 charging stations because the big problem with that, Pete, and it goes back to my story when I was in Fresno a couple months ago, the poor experience I had with getting my electric rental car recharged. So the point of this one, Pete, is are car companies flipping into battery manufacturers and essentially building charging infrastructure because demands are requiring it, right? Demands of consumers and expectations with carbon footprint neutrality. So that's kind of interesting. The last comment I'll say about this is that when the electrification allows me to go somewhere every 300 to 400 miles and juice my car up in about 5 minutes, and there is a tremendous amount of access to do that, I'm all in for electric vehicles. But until they get to that stage, it's going to be an uphill battle. And I think doing a callback from one of our shows about British Petroleum buying Travel Centers of America so they can have that access and build out that infrastructure that's already there. So anyway, it's a two-part comment, Pete. Are the car manufacturers getting into battery production and charging stations because they just can't support the demand? That's kind of the gist of this topic, and that's what I'm seeing.
Well, Doug, I have a lot to say about this. First of all, we know, Doug, you hate electric cars. You hate the planet. We know. It's okay. It's all right, man. It's okay. We get it. We get it. It's all good. Okay. Second of all, Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, yesterday signed into law a declaration that says that all new city government building projects and all city vehicles must be green by, I think it's 2035. So it must be electric. And as you would imagine, response went down party lines, my friend, about how people felt about that. But a lot of the questions that came up were, is there going to be interchangeability with the chargers? Does this mean that, if there's not going to be one particular universal charger set, are we going to have different types of chargers at every city building, at every city motor pool? How are we going to manage this because there is no standard? One of the things that's driving me crazy right now is that I bought one of these big Z Flip phones from Samsung. You open it up and it's fun, but it's just too damn big. So I need something smaller. It's too heavy. I'm waiting for the next iPhone to come out because it's going to have the USB-C, I think it is, the universal charger. So it's got the same charger as a Samsung, same charger as everything else. And now we're going to have one universal charging toggle because of European requirements. And that's what I think will eventually happen, Doug. I think you're going to see interchangeable batteries. I will be very dead, but at some point, I think that the world's going to realize that just like if the battery runs out in a flashlight, you can decide if you want Energizer or Duracell or whatever Costco brand, but there are interchangeable cells. I think that companies like British Petroleum that own these truck stops are simply going to have convertible cells. You need a what kind? We got 8 types of cells. Which one is it? Which one fits in your car? Chunk, chunk, chunk. You take it in and take it out. That's a long way down the road. So between here and then, the main problem you hear from people about EVs was always cost. Well, now it's not so much cost. The second one was it's just not convenient. And I think that the fact that it still remains so inconvenient for so many people years later is slowing down sales and adoption. So until we come over this problem of convertibility, I think it's going to be very difficult to get people to buy it wholesale.
Yeah. I should have pulled a statistic about how many gas stations there are in the United States. You got 17,000 Tesla stations, and this cooperative wants to build 30,000, so that'd be 47, right? I better ask Siri that number. But anyway, are there 47,000 gas stations in the United States? I have no idea, but that would give peace of mind to users that they're not going to run out of juice in the middle of Kansas on I-70.
Doug, if you ever come visit me in New Hampshire, okay, we're going to go to the dual Whole Foods Trader Joe's in Bedford, New Hampshire, and watch the yummy yoga mommies all fight over who gets to park in the EV, and see them knocking on the window saying, "Are you done?" Being all like aggravated and angry as they go in to get their organic kale. It's awesome to watch. You know me, I'm an observer of the human condition, so I love that kind of problem. But it's pretty funny, Doug.
Good. All right, brother. What you got for your first topic?
Yeah, my first topic is one of these things where, speaking of me being an observer of the human condition, I am an economist, and we are more than anything interested in incentives. So why does someone do something? Is it for an incentive or a disincentive? And it usually falls in the hands of businesses. So right now, it's not a big incentive to be in the cardboard packaging industry. Why? Well, they're not selling a lot of cardboard packaging, cardboard boxes, cardboard packaging, and the associated cardboard shipping packaging, rubber peanuts or plastic peanuts, all the other things. The sale of these things is way, way, way down. I put this up on LinkedIn today, Doug, but over the same time last year, we're down almost 21% at this point, compared to 2022. And yes, last year was a little crazy when it came to shipping, but we were beginning to see normalcy come back because of inventory problems. Well, now that in a time of year, because of all the peak seasons, when we expect it to start rocketing back, it's going in the exact opposite direction. You're just seeing fewer and fewer people buying cardboard boxes. It's a great indicator of the world's global landscape. If we're not buying things to put in boxes, we're not buying boxes to put things in to ship overseas, we're probably going to have lower traffic numbers. We're going to have lower import numbers. We're going to have lower retail sales. But more importantly, it's another great indication of an overabundance of inventory. So this is one of those things that I watch pretty closely. I also watch dwell times on vessels pretty closely, the cost of diesel fuel. There's a bunch of weird ones, but yeah, this is pretty clear indicator, Doug, that things are a lot worse than I think we realize.
Yeah, it's funny how I don't know if indirect indicators would be the right thing, but when I heard this topic you were going to run, I immediately thought of aluminum and the cost of aluminum during the pandemic. And I explained it. It took me a little bit like, why is that? And then I was explaining to some friends that if you and I and everybody else goes to a bar and we get our beers, right? Let's say that we drink, I don't know, 5 beers that night, and everybody there drinks 5. It's a little on the low end for you, Pete. I know that. Yeah. It comes out of one of the options is a keg. So you have a keg of beer serving 50 people, so to speak. Well, now all those people can't go to the bar or couldn't go to the bar during the pandemic, but they still want to drink their beer, so they had to buy it in bottles and cans, right? So you needed a huge amount of aluminum to support the same amount of beer that you would get kind of in the keg. So I don't know how many draws of beer you get out of a keg. 100?
No idea, buddy. No idea.
So let's just say it's 100 for easy math. You have one keg that supports 100 drinks. Well, now you need 100 cans of aluminum in order to provide people the same amount of booze. And let's just say people were drinking a lot more during the pandemic. So my whole point is that aluminum and the cost of aluminum just shot up, and the indicator, was just consumption of alcohol was done at the home versus out in restaurants and bars. So I thought of that whenever you made mention of the corrugate cardboard box situation.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar, man. They're all around us, these weird consumer indicators that they just don't pay enough attention to. Sale of engagement rings, cost of diamonds on the free market. That's another great one. It's way down. It's another great indicator of consumer confidence. Mm-hmm. And it used to be used cars, but we've had such a big blip. Really can't depend on that statistic right now. But there's a ton of them. But with aluminum, Doug, that is a very difficult commodity to get your hands on right now. In a lot of forms, everything from car manufacturers, aerospace. I mean, it goes everywhere. People they're running out of it. So that's a great commodity to watch.
Yeah. Good. All right. So we have some halftime here. What, of course, Cap Logistics puts on the show. Keenan pushes the buttons and turns the levers. We can't thank them enough for that. So caplogistics.com for supply chain needs. Please reach out to them. So, Pete, on the halftime, you want to roll? You want me to go first?
Yeah, man, I'll go first because yours is much better than mine. So we'll definitely close on yours. I have been spending a lot of time in airports with my finger up my nose, which means a lot of Netflix time. And I watched the quarterback series on Netflix. Did you watch it, Doug?
No, but on Netflix, is there an icon of Patrick Mahomes on the cover?
It is Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So it's Patrick Mahomes, Mariota, and Kirk Cousins that they follow closely through the course of last season. And we already know what happens at the end of the season. So the thing that got me about this show was how much, first of all, how much I can get into a sports documentary. It doesn't take much. And then second of all, how likable they all ended up becoming through the course of the show. Really not a Vikings fan because I'm a Saints fan, but it was kind of hard not to like Kirk Cousins when all was said and done. He's just a solid guy, very, very, very good citizen. Tried really hard and just had a bad year. Marcus Mariota, Hawaiian guy, just did not work out for him. But they showed all of that. I mean, they showed the guy's season collapsing and then him just leaning on his family, going back to Hawaii and getting it back together and signing with Philly for next year. But then the Patrick Mahomes, he's a really intense young man. I wish my mother was still alive because she was a Red Raider from Texas Tech. She'd probably have a Patrick Mahomes tattoo at this point. But just the way that a whole city and a fan base can rally around one player and how that one player thrives on it. I could never be a professional athlete. I just couldn't handle that kind of pressure. But to just see him thrive under it and just how well they did and all the setbacks that he faced. If you're into sports documentaries, yes, it's NFL films. So yes, it's going to be very, skewed. There's not a whole lot of controversy here other than is Patrick Mahomes' wife a real pain in the ass or not? And that's for you to decide. But it's just a great watch, Doug. So if you haven't watched it, I really recommend it.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. You made a recommendation on the American Gladiators Netflix. Yeah. That was a good one. Thank you for that. One. That was a good one.
That's a great one. So okay, Doug, you got a great one, man. Uncork it. Go ahead and let's talk about it.
All right. So this is about a wedding in March of 2022 that took place here in Colorado in Aspen. And it is an example of how out of touch affluent people can be and how first world problems really aren't that, just the comical nature of first world problems. So here's the deal. There was a wedding in Aspen. It was a gentleman that spent $2 million on the wedding for his daughter. And it was at the Little Nell Hotel, but then they went up to the top of Aspen on the gondolas. That's where the party was and the shindig. So here's what transpired. They flew out a 12-piece band from LA because there are no 12-piece bands in the state of Colorado.
Of course they did.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's a fact. There's no 12-piece bands here in Colorado. So flew them out, and the sound system up at the top of the mountain didn't work. So there was some delay, and they were having issues or whatever. So it took about, 30 or 45 minutes to get that figured out. But that was the catalyst to have delays in the wedding that just cascaded towards a complete debacle, right? So first of all, the delay in getting started caused the food to be a little bit cold because there wasn't enough ovens or whatever to keep it warm. And then the key thing is that the time in between the courses of the meal had to be shrunk, right? So they basically got their food too soon. Another problem is that Nelly came out to do a private concert, and unfortunately his 50-minute set had to be cut short. So that kind of sucked.
I hope he got to country grammar, Doug. That's all I care about.
Yeah. It's horrible. And because there's a hard line with when you need to get off of the mountain for any parties, the whole event had to be condensed into a shorter amount of time because the hard stop was 11 o'clock. They had to get down. And so the whole thing was a debacle. And the funny thing is that the guy that put all this on, his quote about his $2 million wedding for his daughter, and I have a kicker at the end of this, was that it was a day that will live in infamy, is what he said about his daughter's wedding. So that basically means, Pete, he's comparing Pearl Harbor to his crappy wedding experience on the top of Aspen Mountain. And then there's been some photos and publications. You look at all the photos, it looks like every single person is having a good time. They're jumping around, there's smiles, the whole nine yards. So he's suing this audio company for like $80,000 because the wedding was ruined in which he compared it to Pearl Harbor. I'm sure if you Google it, you can pull up the story and the pictures. It's unbelievable. And the ironic thing, if that's the right use of this word, Pete, is that couple is now divorced. And that wedding took place in March of 2022, and it's August of 2023.
Oh, I love it. You just made the story so much better.
I know. That is the kicker. So it's just an example of how out of touch people are that have an insane amount of money, and that first world problems are now compared to, disasters that impacted our company and the world, or not company, our country and the world, as far as the day that will live in infamy. So it's just, I didn't even know. I can't even say anymore, Pete.
Doug, I have so much to say. So I believe I've covered this on the show before. I have a very strict no weddings policy with limited exceptions. So if you invite me to your wedding, I'm probably not going. If you invite me to your kid's wedding, I'm probably not going. Like I'll send a card in my regrets and a check, because that's all these kids want anyway. They don't know who I am, right? Unless it's someone who's extremely close to me, I'm not going to your wedding. For young people, I say to them all the time, I don't know why you're spending all this money on your wedding. You're probably going to have a couple more anyway. So maybe you should save all this money for this one and put it toward a house or retirement. Make some relatively risky investments in some funds and some commodities. I don't know, but don't waste it on a party so that your girl can feel like a princess. It's just silly. Now, all that being said with that part, Doug, I am in the midst of having to pay for part of a wedding. So eldest son is getting married 2 years from now. And we have a small part to play as financially as the parents of the groom. And it's not nearly as bad as it could be. But to just have someone, walk up to you and say, I need a whole bunch of cash for a party, it seems a little obnoxious. Now, all that being said, Doug, if I won the Megabucks, if I won Powerball, I would make parties like that look like a backyard barbecue in Abilene when I was 12. Amy and I fight about this all the time because I ruin her fantasies about winning the lottery, right? So she'll say, why do you have to make this so terrifying and dystopian whenever we talk about the lottery? Because I'm like, first thing we're doing is getting security, very good private security, like ex-Navy SEALs that bathe in blood. We're going to have a bunch of them, and no one goes anywhere ever again. I'm never driving ever again. I'm going to have somebody drive me. I'm never wearing pants ever again. I'm wearing shorts if I'm that rich. But here's one thing I'm damn positive, Doug. I would throw parties constantly. If I was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, like Keenan's birthday, I'm telling you right now, we would do something outrageous. I would just take him to the McDonald's for the sheet cake and Ronald McDonald guy. We would take him. He's not going to get that joke. I'd find out who his favorite band is and have him play for him. Like Doug, you and I would be at every Jayhawk game. Like we would do give me that kind of money in a plane. There won't be anyone I'm left, but are we going to have a good time? So I kind of understand, but I would love to meet the young lady who demanded a $2 million wedding. I'm sure she's delightful, Doug.
Yes.
It's a shock she wasn't still married, isn't
it? Anyway, I had to get that one on. That was not going to be my topic. My real topic is going to be next week, right? Anyway. So, well, let me jump into the purpose of this podcast, which is global trade and supply chain logistics. So this one, Pete, you may know, I'm glad I'm bringing this up on the show because you may know a little bit more about this than I do, but it caught me just yesterday as I was developing what am I going to talk about today. And I was kind of like, what the hell's going on with Zim, the steamship line? Right. So it just looks like they are just shedding, not even assets. They're shedding leases and commitments to vessels that they lease like nobody's business. And the CEO is making comments like, during the downturn, we're actively manage and rationalizing our fleet and services. But the gist of it I saw is that, so they're the 10th largest steamship line, at least that's what I read. 90% of their fleet is leased compared to other steamship lines, which is about 50-50. 2 leases by Zim have immediately been terminated through mutual agreement. Those were flipped over to OOCL. OOCL has plenty of volume to throw on there, so it's not like there's no volume in the world market to fill these containers. There was a sell of like 6 other leases that apparently kind of didn't go through, but they're actively trying to unload their commitments to TEUs as they go on. And they're even subletting some of these leases, and so it's crazy, So I jumped on and started looking at the financials and things of that nature about what's going on with Zim. The only thing I could see that jumped out is 2 things, Pete. And this is a little bit of a naive comment. It's just kind of my initial take after reading it. Is number one, it said that a substantial amount of their volume is trans-Pacific, right? So we know that there's been, there's basically minimal peak season. A lot of their vessels are running between China and the U.S., where other steamship lines are more diverse with their routes and their lanes across the world, where Zim, from what I read, was really focused on Chinese imports and that type of trade. And the other thing, which is more put on your tinfoil hat, is there something going on that we don't know about that is right behind the door that's going to put Zim in a position where they're going to be sold, have a yellow situation where they're going to go out of business because there's not a lot of assets there that they own. I don't know. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it just struck me as odd that this pretty substantial commentary on that industry has kind of gone under the radar that I've not seen a whole lot. But it seems pretty potentially damaging to the industry. So anyway, Pete, my question to you is WTF with Zim?
Yeah. I don't think anything nefarious. I don't think anything, too crazy is going on. I would say that first and foremost, Zim understands its economic reality, and they're taking steps to make themselves as resilient as possible for what could be a long-term downturn. And unlike most of the other ocean carriers, they're actually talking about it. And they're publicly doing what they have to do, and they don't have to put as happy a face on it because everyone sees what's going on. They are very strong in certain parts of the world. They almost have a very tight grip on it. And in those parts of the world, they're doing great. So like any good logistics company, when things get a little weird, a little uncomfortable, they're going to fall back on their strengths. And I think you'll find that they'll be doubling down in those areas where they are strong and maybe reconsidering the places where they're not for the long term and not finding themselves getting caught financially in a bad situation. So pure speculation, but from the outside looking in, would not surprise me if they were bought at all. But it also would surprise me if they weren't taking many of the steps they're taking now, given the very uncomfortable realities we're all facing economically in this business.
Interesting.
And I thought we were going to make it a whole show without saying yellow, but Doug, I didn't know which one of us was going to do it, but it was going to be one of us.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, bring us home. Your last topic, my friend.
Yeah, so geekity geek alert, everyone nerd alert. The World Trade Organization's annual data book came out, and this is a treasure trove of info for undateable dorks like me. And it's a deep dive into statistical analysis that we look at practically every year. Everything from demographics, financial growth, investment, direct foreign investment, foreign military sales. It goes deep into demographics as well. And there's a couple of things that really caught my eye. And one of them was the unfortunate shifts in demographics in Mexico. We're seeing an aging there that shouldn't be, and how there's more work in Mexico than ever before. So we're seeing more people stay in Mexico. The continued migration of people from Central America into Mexico and then eventually the U.S. Incredible immigration numbers in Canada. How they're just trying to build as big a population as possible while they still can there. And then also the expected on our end, but apparently ignored by everyone else, global effects of a pandemic and then an ensuing financial slowdown and the rebuild, and how the United States really has had one of the more resilient economies throughout the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic. And then some speculation, if it hadn't have been for wars in Ukraine, just how much better the world's economy would probably be right now, regarding as well as probably the relationship between the United States and China. So much like World War I, man, it's a conflict in a part of the world that most people couldn't find on a map, that is having a tremendous economic impact on everyone's lives, from inflation, from food insecurity, all the deaths that are going along with it, and then a lack of comfort and just continued speculation in global markets because there just is no certainty. So it's an excellent read for those of you who don't know what you're going to do with your free time, like now or ever. But yeah, I would absolutely positively, Doug. I can't recommend enough. Get a deep dive on it.
I think I'm going to wait for the movie version, Pete, because usually the movie's better than the book.
You're such a pain in my ass, Doug.
When I looked at that thing, it's 138 pages. I was flipping through it on my phone, and I'm just like, graph, analytics. It was really hard from this simple kid from Kansas to pull out meaningful data in what that thing had to say. So I'm glad that you kind of summarized it for me. But it would be nice to condense that down in this world of TikTok and Reels, to just give me the highlights, right? Which you have done thusly. And I appreciate that. But yeah, I couldn't really dive into that, Pete. I was like, 138 pages? No, thank you. I'll just wait and see what Pete has to say about it. and you had some good perspective, but it didn't give me a whole lot of anything that I didn't already know from this show and the things that we talk about already.
You don't know anything without data. So none of us know anything until we have statistics and proof behind it. You've never been able, I think, ever to point out the professional differences in us now quite as well as you just did. The sales guy who's like, I don't really think I want to spend a lot of time reading the details. I'll just wait for the product guy to explain it all to me. Hey, nerd. That was kind of what that was like. And then, the last thing I'll say about your reaction is there's so much nuance and so much depth when you actually read the source material. You may find something other people don't find useful. And that's really what I've built my career on, Doug. So yeah, I read all of it. Yeah, I go through all of it. And I know it's sad. I know it's pathetic, but that's how I roll, man. That's how I've cobbled together this bizarre career of mine. So thank you for humiliating me about that. I really appreciate that, buddy.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to do it. And the little example you just gave about the sales guy looking for the product guy, that's been my life since I got into this industry.
It works for all you young logistics professionals out there. If you want to be a good salesman, bring in the product people with you. You'll sell a lot more business.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Well, Pete, I love this one. This was a good show. We covered a lot of bases on transportation, logistics, global trade many times on this conversation. And I want to thank Cap for putting it all together. Caplogistics.com if you want to check out the services they provide in the logistics space. And I think that's about it. So happy Colorado Day to everybody here in Colorado. Thank you for listening. We appreciate all of our listeners. And we still have some big news to bring to the table about our show. We haven't talked about that, but we probably maybe should next week.
I think so.
It's coming around the corner. So
flights are booked, Doug. Flights are booked, Doug.
Oh,
flights
good.
Are booked. Yeah.
Good. That's called a teaser. But anyway, thank you all for listening. We appreciate it. We wouldn't be here without you. And that is a wrap on another edition of Global Trade This Week. Pete, catch you later, my friend.
See you, buddy.